Looks like we're 3 minutes past. So I think that's sort of the official, like the new normal in starting times in Zoom meetings, or at least that's what someone shared with me earlier today. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Carver, and it's my privilege to lead this conversation today on faith, the intersectionality of faith and LGBTQ, and particularly to talk about how Walmart's ARGs both welcomed and challenged a big conversation back in June on this discussion. Like I said, I'm Lisa Carver. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I've been at Walmart for the last 6 years, primarily in the data strategy and insights organization. And every day it's my thrill to go to work and in the data organization as the customer success lead and director for the health and wellness domain. And it's my job every day to help ensure that my stakeholders have the data they need in order to deliver affordable healthcare for people, for our customers and patients. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Rock Skeens, who is the co-chair of our faith-based ARG at Walmart. And what I'm going to do is let Rock introduce himself and tell you just a little bit. I think a lot of you probably have met many of my friends and peers in Walmart Pride over the years. So I think probably an introduction to our ARG is not necessarily needed at this moment, but I would love for you guys to hear a little bit from Rock about favor, and then we'll get into the conversation today that we all came to talk about. So Rock, why don't you introduce yourself, my friend?
Well, Lisa, thank you. Thank you for being my friend, and thank you for the group for allowing us time to talk this afternoon. My name is Rock. I've been with Walmart for 12 years now. I work in our compliance department, particularly in environmental compliance. And for the last several months, it's been my privilege to work on COVID remediation. And so we're doing good for people every single day. And that's not only our associates and customers, but also communities. And it is also my privilege to serve as chairperson of our faith-based group. And that is known as FAVOR. That acronym stands for Faith and Vocation, Opportunity and Reality. It is an interfaith organization. Our ethos is that all associates are allowed to appropriately integrate their faith at work. And so that's an absolute, it is not a particular faith perspective, it's an interfaith group. It's been a real learning journey for us over the last several years. And what we have as our ethos is to understand, accept, and include. And I hope what can come out in today's conversation is that by listening, we learn, and by learning, we understand. And then that understanding helps us to accept and include. And so it's been a learning experience for us to work with people of other faiths, but it's also been a learning experience for us to work with the other employee or associate resource groups, and particularly the Pride group. I think working with Lisa and the other leaders and the members, and then across our members, it's been a great dialogue, a very dynamic back and forth, and I appreciate the term Lisa uses, my friend, and I certainly count her now as a friend. I've learned a lot from her, and I look forward to the discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Rock. So today we're going to talk a little bit, I'm going to provide a little bit of context before we jump into our discussion around the marquee event that we had in June. We actually was 3 events. It started as one and evolved into 3 distinct events. But first I want to talk about just, give you a little overview of how we connected and celebrated Pride at Walmart during a lockdown. Some of the key things that we focused on during June. Also, we'll talk about some of the challenging conversations that we had coming into starting earlier this year when Rock and I were actually in the office together, passing each other in the cafeteria back in the day when you actually went to the office. Rock, do you remember those days? It seems so long ago.
I do.
But we'll talk a little bit about some of those conversations that both Rock was having on his side with his ARG, the conversations we were having as a Pride team, and some of the key opportunities that we saw in order to drive forward a collaboration. And then learning from and leaning into intersectionality together as 2 ARGs at Walmart. And then what we learned and how we build on success from these events going forward. So I just want to give a little bit of context. We had, obviously, given the novel circumstances of COVID, that's, we all as organizations, we're all struggling to figure out how in the world do we celebrate Pride virtually, right? And, we also had the added complexities of the George Floyd during that time. So there was a lot of external factors that really were impacting our particular communities, right? Normally at Walmart, we kick off our Pride planning somewhere, we like to think that we're being aggressive if we jump in March, April of the year. We start having those conversations early on. And so one of the key events, though, our key sort of ideas had come to the front was really the opportunity for us to focus on three specific pillars in our Pride planning. And it all really revolved around leadership in faith communities, in the enterprise, and within our own company. But I'll come back to that in just a moment. But it was interesting because at Walmart, given our scale, that most of you are probably pretty aware of, we operated really separately up to this point. And so we operated, San Bruno or the Bay Area had their really terrific Pride celebrations. We had our Hoboken office, and then all of our stores and regions in between all celebrated Pride. Sort of we were all supportive, but yet we hadn't really had the opportunity to really connect the dots. And in this setting, where we were virtual, it gave us this opportunity to bring it all together for our first real true unified Pride. And I called this out because I think, of all the things, and some of you may have heard about some of these topics this week. I think Katie and Maritza had shared some of this information earlier today. But this was a huge opportunity for us and a huge win for us as an organization. It really gave us an opportunity to leverage the best that all of our different campuses had to offer. And we all came together and provided some really robust programming during June. And some of that you see on the slide. We had coffee chats. We talked about our history as a community. One of the things that we're really proud of was our Out as a Leader series that featured Jack Williams and Joe Cano. And these were great opportunities for our associates to really engage with Walmart leaders and their own particular journeys as out executives at Walmart. We also went outside of the company and engaged leaders and talked about their journeys and what they offered in terms of mentorship and sort of life lessons. But we also wanted to honor sort of the uniqueness of and diversity of our own community, right? And so we wanted to have fun with it as well. And as you can see, we had, the Queer Queens of Wine, which was awesome. And I think the Ari Kiki event probably was the one that everybody is super, pepped up about continuing year after year. I think this may become a regular inside of Walmart going forward. But we also had some terrific rollouts of the pronoun pin program, right? And it's like, what's your pronouns? And I think you've heard a little bit about that in this forum earlier today as well. And then we also had, of course, ally training. So it was a really robust and aggressive calendar of events for us in June. And so we were really thrilled, all super successful. I say all this because given that we had all these events going, we still had this opportunity to really focus around a particular event that had spun up that really got its start, believe it or not, going back to 2009. And so we had, Walmart had originally screened for the Bible Tells Me So, which was Daniel Carslake's original film, and it was obviously a landmark film on faith and LGBTQ back, I believe it debuted at Sundance in 2008, and Walmart brought it for a private screening in 2009. So we built this incredible relationship with Daniel, right? And the power of that relationship over time, we continue to stay in touch, particularly Bruce Gillespie, the great Bruce Gillespie, which most of you know, and I hope may be on the phone with us or on the Zoom with us today. But Bruce had stayed in touch with Daniel over the years, and when we brought it to Walmart back in 2009, it was actually pretty controversial, right? Or I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it was a more sensitive topic than you might have imagined. So essentially, we hosted this event in a closed forum for all intents and purposes, right? So it's sort of the Pride group got to screen it. there was a, open discussion with Daniel at the time, but it wasn't a corporate offering, right? And so, it was great. We all felt good about it, or at the time, I wasn't at Walmart at the time, but the team felt really good, and it obviously struck a nerve with associates. It really hit something that the associates really resonated with them. And when Bruce found out that, by the way, the good news is we also made Daniel Carslake the Grand Marshal of the Northwest Arkansas Parade. Now, I know it's not a New York or it's not a San Francisco parade, but at least he got to be a Grand Marshal of the Northwest Arkansas Pride Parade. So that cements relationships forever. But beyond that, it was great that Bruce became aware that Daniel had a follow-up film and was going to be releasing it this summer for They Know Not What They Do. And so when we reached out to Daniel, he was game. And the great partnership that we had with Daniel from the beginning, and Mark Merceri from First Run Films, we were on fire. We were all pumped up. This was going to be, sort of the screening was going to be our marquee June event. And we were going to be able to then turn and focus on this conversation that's so important to us at Walmart. With that, we engaged Rock, and Rock, I'll come to this in just a second. I'll try to get through sort of the backgrounder here quickly. But we reached out to Rock, and Rock was, of course, just super excited, passionate, like, let's do this, let's find this opportunity and go. And as I'll come back to this later, but we obviously were able to create not just one event. Originally, we had looked to model, Walmart had hosted a series of events around the film, The Hate You Give, in 2019. And so we'd had a whole series of meetings and dialogue series. And so we had modeled, or we had hoped to model, for They Know Not What They Do, around this same sort of premise or approach. And so this is how we sort of came up with this path and then started moving forward. It was really important, I think, to take a little step back now and talk a little bit about how we got to, I say Rock was super passionate and excited about jumping on board and finding the opportunity to work with us. But Rock, you had some very specific issues or questions that came up in favor as an ARG, and some things that your associates and teammates were actually looking to understand and learn. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. We did listen and learn with Lisa and the leadership of the Pride group, and then we took that back to discussion with the different leaders, and we make sure that we have representatives from all faiths represented. And we had a good, healthy discussion, and I think even that discussion, and I'll probably repeat today a principle, if you listen and learn, that's how you really live. And so by the interfaith discussion of listening and learning about perspectives of one another's faith, but then I think the stake in the ground that we could all attach and hold on to, and that helps us weather any storm, was the major ethos of most faiths universally is love. And you can't lose with that. And so that became a central focus for all our discussions. And from that seed, I think very good, bountiful fruit was produced. And so then through that lens of listening and learning, and then understanding that love was our primary premise, then we were able to go back and have the dialogue and discussion. A particular faith, it might have seemed a little controversial and was better, it may have done more harm than good, and I commend the Pride leadership. They were very sensitive to that. And so we, rather than die on the vine, we moved forward. And we had really good interaction, we had really good discussion, and we were able then to go ahead and formulate and go ahead and participate and fully support and endorse the event. And I think we all learned a lot from it, on the surface as well as underneath by viewing the film. That's incredible. If someone hasn't seen that film, or films, plural, I think Daniel does an incredible job, again, to help us listen and learn, and then we understand, accept, and include.
Yeah, that's terrific. I know that there were so many times that Rock and I were always looking for an opportunity. We knew that faith, this intersection of faith, was so important. And it's particularly important for those of you who don't know, the majority of, we have a very large footprint in the South, and I ripped this off of, shamelessly, of my teammates, Alex and Kathy, who had done a presentation on intersectionality back at Southern States back in the fall. And the numbers are pretty staggering when you look at it in terms of our associate footprint in the South, right? And so, as we all know, particularly evangelical Christianity is still, I'm not telling anybody anything that's not news, right? So, and as a person who, my family was based in the South, obviously evangelical Christianity is core to the culture here, right? And it's also typically the thing that's used most aggressively as a weapon against LGBTQ people in terms of allowing them to live their authentic selves, both at home and in the workplace. So we really felt as an organization, Rock's team was really but really challenged with how do we deal with LGBTQ issues, as a multi-faith ARG, and they had questions, but yet they were really reaching and striving and wanting to learn. And then on our side of the table, we really knew that the issue of faith and this intersection and talking about it openly in the workplace was profoundly important to us as an organization. So coming back to the film, right? So we had started out originally thinking that we would have this show Daniel's really powerful new film in a private screening, which First Run had gotten really creative with us to create this virtual screening. We were all running really fast to do this. At that point, when you start talking about moving at that kind of scale and putting together all these pieces, it was significant. And then Daniel was this amazing partner in helping us engage leaders in the faith community, openly gay leaders in the faith community. And of course, you see the pictures on the screen and the names on the screen. We had the wonderful Bishop Gene Robinson and the incomparable Rabbi Steve Greenberg, who agreed to join us. We had originally, in our conversation, talked about the opportunity to also engage someone from the Muslim clergy. And this was a topic that we had all been super excited. We thought, we're going to be we're going to bring together all these first faith leaders in this setting, and we're going to sort of move forward, bring them all to the table, have this discussion. Of course, as a pride group, we were just excited about, candidly, that we had sort of people that were first in their particular faith traditions who had agreed to come and talk to us about this intersectionality and their journeys, their own personal journeys. As Rock mentioned, as we proceeded through these conversations, Rock and I were going, 90 miles an hour. The Pride team was going 90 miles an hour. And then when we started talking about really like vetting out the speakers, then we had to come to the reality that there were some journeys that we weren't quite ready to take. And so the team worked with Favor. Favor wasn't, didn't want to, because you guys actually, Rock, are in sort of a really interesting position, right? You're all trying to learn about each other's faith traditions. And so this was not a journey that Favor was necessarily ready to take at the time. And so we as a team aligned that we would move forward with Gene and Stephen in this format. And that was created a lot of conversations on both sides, right, Rob?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if allowed, and it's just me, just being transparent, we, in the interfaith circle discussion, I think Lisa mentioned, Christianity in the South, and then Northwest Arkansas is definitely Southern. I'll go out and Lisa, pull your ear if I start talking too much and hold the time up on me. But even being in Bentonville now for over 10 years, I believe it was in July or August that there was a Confederate statue that was finally removed from the town square. And so with that lens, then also the Muslim community in Northwest Arkansas. We've worked very hard. There's some incredible talent that has been recruited by Walmart, and it's like, they wanted to know what their faith landscape would be like in that. And so now I have, like Lisa, a very close personal friend, actually one that came to my wedding a few weeks ago, being of the Christian faith, but yet this Muslim brother was one of the first invitees to my wedding. That's a relationship we have. And he also introduced us to the Abrahamic Faith Center, and then his perspective and the consensus from our Muslim representatives was that this might cause more controversy than benefit. So we put that element on hold for the time being, but then went ahead, and it was beneficial into the Muslim community. It gave them a listening and learning opportunity. It gave them some information to go, and so now those seeds have been planted, and I think we made, we're making progress. We've grown and we've developed.
I think that was such a powerful conversation, and it was raw. And I share this in full transparency, just from this conversation, because I think it was an important learning for us, right? Not to assume as to make assumptions. And so there was just this opportunity for us to also learn from a pride perspective and engage in a different way. But to make a long story short about that, what we ended up with was a terrific panel, and even more powerfully, like we sent our Chief Customer Officer, Janie Whiteside, a quick note and gave her the background on what we were about to do. And she jumped on immediately as, I would love to moderate, it would be my pleasure, and let's go. And in addition to that, Janie was the enthusiastic supporter of the budget for the screening, so she offered to do that as well. And so we had this terrific senior sponsor, and then our global chief people officer, Donna Morris, who was relatively new to the company at the time, had heard about this opportunity, and she wanted to endorse it. Because it really was a unique collaboration between two ARGs that typically you wouldn't necessarily put us on the, I think any of us probably would have assumed that we would be coming forward together, with an event of this magnitude across the company. And so we had terrific senior sponsorship, which, will be one of the things I would say is a key to success, right? So listening and then having that senior level sponsorship was hugely important to us. And so the course of our planning on this, though, really, we dealt with some other challenges along the way as well, including the fact that that we wanted to separate out the film from the panel discussion. And some of that was really about the fact that that there didn't want to be an implication that our faith group endorsed sort of negativity and lack of engagement. I was trying to think of the word here. Actually, I had written it down earlier, and it just, but there was a sensitivity that they not be associated with that type of exclusion, right? So the favor team had wanted to keep those separate. So the Pride group took on the film screening, and then we scheduled the panel discussion to actually precede the film. So what we wanted to do is to use the panel discussion as a way to even tee up this topic more broadly across the enterprise. The great news for us as an organization is that we had over 1,000 participants who signed on for that that panel discussion with Donna, Janie, Jean, Rabbi Greenberg, and then Daniel Carslake. Out of that, then we followed up, fast followed with a film screening the next week. And then we added on a third event around this because there was so much energy around this topic across the organization. Associates were reaching out, you know, really grateful that we were openly talking about faith, because it was interesting that we found that so many LGBTQ people didn't feel like they could live their faith authentically in the workplace as well. So this was an opportunity for us to bring that together, and also for associates who didn't necessarily have the right answers. We brought faith leaders to the table who were able to have some of those conversations about faith journeys and about reconciliation, more importantly. So this was a really powerful opportunity for us. And like you said, the key learnings for us were really, you know, that, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, we were running really hard, really fast, really excited, trying to incorporate this into our June Pride event. And then simultaneously, though, just the knowledge that we needed to take a half step back along the way and reassess and just kind of put all of this in a context that we could work through this partnership carefully and appropriately. Would you add anything else there, my friend?
No, I think, Lisa, you did it well. Again, I may, you know, we learn by repetition, but, and again, just looking back, it was good. Even when you mentioned the half step back, it was an opportunity for us to listen and learn from one another in the interfaith group, to learn more about one another's faith. It challenged us to plumb deeper, not, you know, to really think, you know, what is the full meaning of the message of love, and how do I demonstrate that? And then the conversations then with the Pride leadership were dynamic, but they were developmental as well. And we were learning from the Pride leadership as we had that discussion. And then to go ahead and move forward with the film and with the panel. And then the information that we gleaned from that, again, it's an ethos, it's a life principle. It helped us to listen, it helped us to learn, and that's the correct way for us to live. So we're very thankful for the opportunity to have been able to work together.
That's great, Rock. I think that we all learned a lot. But I think, you know, again, you know, I mentioned this a little bit earlier for everyone who's thinking about how do you frame this up to senior leaders, and a lot of it, you know, came down to, you know, obviously we have, as I mentioned earlier, an extensive footprint in the South where faith is a core part of the culture. We knew that our associates, you know, grew up surrounded and engaging in communities of faith across the board. So this was definitely an opportunity to have that conversation in that context of value for our associates. It also came at a time, obviously, in COVID, when people were, you know, I think we all remember those days, early days of, and we still continue this way, so I'm not downplaying it, but in the early days, particular fear and anxiety, and people really trying to like be challenged about their feelings and emotions during a really challenging time, a dark time. And so there was a need for people to lean on faith as individuals. And so we knew that the time was right for us as an organization to have this conversation. And, you know, the terrific thing is that we had tremendous support from our D&I team. We had great partners there who led us through, who helped us to like avoid the particular pitfalls that we could run into. Obviously, you know, an organization of our size, these types of events at that scale, where we were literally offering the movie to all of our home office associates. Our original plan had been to share it even more broadly, but we have limitations regarding hourly associates and the ability to commit time there. So we showed it to our entire, or gave that access to the link to all of our home office associates. Then you run into, you know, the gamut of, you know, what are the legal implications of that sort of sharing those links? Do we have broadcast right? So we worked through that. We had great partners in that. Corporate affairs working with us very closely to talk through, how we sort of put the right guardrails around the conversation so that we protected our speakers, we protected our different ARGs, that we were understanding what potential sort of backlash could be internally. And so terrific partnerships. Those are partnerships that if you were to do this again, or if any of you were to do something at this sort of scale in your organizations, or have this conversation broadly across your companies, my recommendation is to really engage those folks early. That was probably my own personal learning in sharing this, is that even though we thought we were getting a really good start back in late March, early April, it takes a heck of a lot of time to really work through these conversations. Rock, I think one of the other things that we learned was really engaging our ARGs a little more broadly. Would you agree? Like, you and I were like gung-ho going after it, and some of our Pride leaders, but I know we both had to take a pause and re-engage and socialize our ARGs respectively on this opportunity. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, sure, Lisa. Thank you. We did, and again, it was a learning experience for us, and I think it's a twofold learning experience. We learned about one another and each other's respective faiths, and then coming back over with a consensus to the Pride leadership. That was a second learning conversation. As I was listening to you and you mentioned those things, one of the things that I might highlight, and it was a learning for us, but I would be hopeful that it would be the same in everyone's organization, and that is our executive sponsors. Lisa mentioned the Janie Whiteside and Donna Morris, the sponsors of the panel and for the event, but when we talked to our interfaith group executive sponsors, we had taken it to two levels. We have membership, but then we have a senior level advisors. And so, senior directors and above are like advisories. We have it's like an advisory board. And we'll take it before a larger group and have quorum. And then we go to our executive sponsors. And I would say this, that both levels of our senior leadership advisors and then also our executive sponsors were fully endorsive, fully supportive to go ahead and form those relationships. And so, yeah, we worked internally and then got full endorsement from senior and executive levels, and then coming right back over to the Pride leadership and understanding, working across all those different elements of an enterprise. It was all positive. The nuts and bolts just seemed to kind of, fit together, and then went ahead and built it.
Well, and I think we had, I think that the outpouring, and by the way, I'll put a plug in. I think that the Human Rights Campaign, and I may have this wrong, so feel free in the chat to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Daniel, Bishop Robinson, Rabbi Greenberg, and Imam Hendricks will be in an event, or if they haven't already had it, my understanding is that they were going to stand up an event and actually have that conversation across all three Abrahamic faiths, I think this month. So unless that's already happened. So I'm really thrilled that conversation continued to evolve and they were able to bring those resources together. So if that hasn't happened and you have an opportunity to attend it, I highly encourage it. All three of these faith leaders that we chose were really powerful. And the response from our associates was astounding. We received, literally, I probably received alone almost 100 emails from people sending me thank you notes for the event. And I just say that and also sharing their own personal experiences and journeys, which led us to this conversation between Pride and Rock about us standing up an ongoing work stream. So the Pride group has established a intersection of faith and LGBTQ work stream inside of our team going forward. So we're actively having some conversations around ongoing content, resources, how we stand up other collaborations with Rock and his team in the future, particularly maybe around the holidays, and some other opportunities like that. So it really spun up, it hit a nerve with our associates. It really, it helped, it resonated, it validated. And again, I keep coming back to the word reconciliation. It really allowed many of our associates to really have that conversation about reconciling this part of who they are. I think the other piece of this is that we struggled right now. I sit here in October, and at the time, candidly, it felt some of those conversations were really challenging, right? And there were things that we wanted to concede on, and things that we agreed would be okay, right? So one of the things that came up for us as an organization was just, again, coming back to the film and sort of the timing of where we placed it. Normally we would have the film, and then we would have the dialogue series, and then come back again. But we chose not to do that again, out of sensitivity for our friends and peers in the favor group. And it worked out fine. At the time, it felt, I'll be really honest, there was a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth of, oh, it has to be this way, right? And we were really married to an approach. And at the end of the day, when I sit here in October, it was such small things, right? And it was so much better, as Rock said, that we conceded, and we still found a way, to make this happen. Cross ARG, collaborations, they're not easy necessarily, right? You have different constituencies with priorities. And so there's always a learning to do there. The other piece that there was a lot of angst around, if we compromise, do we concede that somehow there was inherently something wrong with LGBTQ and faith, right? But of that intersectionality, right? So there was a lot of discussion internally and on our side about that. And I think that we all, like I said, we're looking back at October, and we're really proud of the event and proud of what we learned. Rock, what would you say we would do differently, my friend, as we look ahead to some of the other events we might do?
That's a good question. It went well. I think not differently, but I would just emphasize the discussion. Mm-hmm. And the discussion led us into some depths, and it was more self-exploratory, and it was developmental. Mm-hmm. And so I would just emphasize, I think what we did was right, and that was the discussions. And in that discussion, keeping an open mind. I don't know that we'll have time today, Lisa. I got to share it with you. I happened to see in a news scan today an article published by our president and CEO. And what caught my attention is he said you needed to listen with an open mind and an open heart. And I think that's what I would emphasize. It's not, you have to get past your mindset, your culture, your upbringing. That's what the film really helped us with is we all had, and in our interfaith group, we've got people from, international landscapes. And not only are they of a different faith, but they're not American, by birth. And so it's the discussions lead to a dialogue. It's that interchange, and that's what really develops. And so I think it's a good thing. That's what we did that was right, and that's the main thing that I would recommend, the discussion and the development.
Well, it just goes back to the whole, there are a lot of conversations at this event around intersectionality, and we're all learning to celebrate it, to elevate it, to really embrace it, right? And faith, interestingly enough, is still one of those places that so many people are afraid to go, right? And to have that conversation. And it depends too on where you are sort of living today across the country, right? In the South, those conversations typically can be much more challenging. What was so interesting though, after we had this event, are the number, like in Northwest Arkansas, I'm gonna be really like, we all know this to be true who are part of the Pride group in Bentonville. is that we don't necessarily assume that there's a lot of accepting faith communities. And so it was fascinating whenever we had this event, and then associates started coming forward saying, hey, I want to share that I am part of this open and accepting community of faith. And you know, it was variable. And we started learning, right, about all these resources that we had locally. And it was really beautiful in the sense of, it really encouraged people to bring forward their own experiences, to connect to others. We had parents reaching out, talking about how to talk to their children about faith and about their sexual, about their identity. And so it really was an amazing, like this outpouring, like I said, after the event was really powerful. We have a question in the chat, and I'm going to take it, and then I'll pass it over, Rock, in just a second. But I think that there was a question specifically that talked about did we face any negative feedback from members of the interfaith ERG, because they felt like the gay agenda was being pushed or forced on them. You want to answer that question or take that question?
Yeah, glad to. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for the question. Great one. I would say this in its succinctness, but in all full honesty and transparency. What I have learned going back to 5+ years now, being with this group, we're probably one of the newest employer associate resource groups with Walmart, and so we grew from a very small element. And I see another chat question come in about what if there's not a faith-based ERG. I'll see if I can connect that. So seeing us grow, what I learned in that lesson, and I can remember probably 3+ years ago, a very close personal friend of mine that had helped us for a number of years, she dropped out. And I'm just going to be very transparent. You know, for her singular perspective, her faith was the way, and it was the only way, and it was exclusive. It was not inclusive from her perspective.
Sure.
That dropped off. And the same way, I think, you know, any living, growing organism, some of the older things that are not bringing forth life, they drop off. You still love the person, but that's not what the tenet of love teaches, and that's not the example that you see from the spiritual leaders historically and in modern day of the major faiths. And so will there be some dropping off? I would say yes, but this particular event, I can't recall a single drop off. What I do remember seeing was increase. Yeah. As the discussions occurred and that developmental element occurred, then more people were nodding their heads, and it's like, I didn't know that. I didn't think about that. I hasn't realized that. And Lisa mentioned one thing, and it's very personal to me. We talked about around the holidays and then different, you know, families and things like that. The film talked about that. I've got that experience in my own family with my niece that is choosing to live an alternate lifestyle. And so then it's like, you love this person, and that's all you can say. And so you don't reject, but you love. And so this helped us all to develop, and it helped us to love. And we appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I think, Rock, that I know that's a very personal experience for you, and I know it continues to challenge you and some members of your family. But just know that you have the support you need, and I can get, you know, honestly, it's really courageous of you to go out and to learn and to expand your own experiences and understanding, right? But I'll also address, you know, the interesting part is we had, I wouldn't call it backlash, but we did have some questions from Pride associates about why in the world were we focusing on religion, right? Like when it's been used as, you know, essentially it's been weaponized. Faith has been weaponized against LGBTQ people for almost all time, right? And so why would we lean in so hard on this topic? And so that was a conversation we had to have with our LGBTQ associates. And so for us, it really did come back to, again, this is one part, you know, of our this is one intersection that we wanted to address. And so for us, it really, we were able to have those conversations, but I won't say that we didn't have some challenging conversations in our own community about why would we focus on this? Why would we bring attention to it? What did it matter? What was the impact? And ultimately it came down to, I think the associates probably had the most concern around that, lived in, you know, sort of major metropolitan areas and had not had the awareness, you know, regarding sort of our footprint and the impact of communities of faith, particularly evangelical communities of faith in the South. And so that was a huge conversation we had as well. So it went both ways, which was really interesting to me because, you know, as a person who myself, I grew up, you know, Southern Baptist. I saw someone on here, shout out to the Overcoming Southern Baptist, right? Of us. And so my own experiences, right, you know, were really shaped in the South ultimately. And so for me, just faith is part of the equation day in and day out. And so when this conversation came up, I have to say, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And so that was just another interesting dimension that we had to address and talk through as a team. But it's interesting. I think this has been one of the things, and again, you know, in the midst of, I don't want to say that this was the only conversation we had going on inside of our company at the time, you know, around ARGs. There were obviously, you know, more, I won't say more profound, but deeply challenging issues that we've all been dealing with as ARGs over the past several months. I think what I'll do is, I didn't go into, let me check the chat to see if there are any other specific questions.
Lisa, if I may, there is one and it's been repeated twice. Could I briefly answer that one?
Yeah, jump on it, my friend. Go for it.
So if there's not an interfaith group, go for it. Don't be afraid of it. And please use myself, Walmart, as a reference. I have now developed, I humbly say, a network in the interfaith landscape. Also participate in a number of faith in the workplace enterprises. It's growing. And I think as we'll even see in the potential nomination of Amy Coney Barrett as a Supreme Court judge, faith is now starting to again rise. And like with Walmart, it was one of the last ones, but it's growing and it's coming. And there is a valid place for it. And if I would say this, if any leaders in the organization are not accepting like our executives were, like our senior people were, like our membership was, then that's going to have to be a minority. It won't be the majority for people that are truly of faith. So don't be afraid of it. Go for it. I think you'll find that what we have found, and I quote our Senior Vice President of our Office of Culture, Diversity, and Inclusion, the major tenets of most faith express a singular aspect of love. And it's going to be about loving people, not excluding people. So go for it. If we can ever help you at any time with anything, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and I thank you, Rock, for that. I think that's really important that this is part of all of our journey where we sort of push away and then we come back to, right? And so I think this is for all of us something that is evolving inside our companies, our ability to live our authentic selves, whether that's the part of us that is a person of faith or if it's an LGBTQ person. So so I think this has just been an interesting journey for us as an organization and as two ARGs. I didn't delve, there was a question about the process. We actually had a pretty extensive, like I said, it took us several months to spin this up, and there was quite a bit of there was a question about process. And so, yes, there was quite a bit of process that we walked through, and I'm happy to share offline some of those particular details and how we sort of planned the event and set it up and sort of the things that we ticked off in terms of milestones and the buy-in that we required for that. So happy to share that event plan and those resources with anyone who wants to do something very similar in your organization. I also think that I would like to give a huge shout out to, sorry, my what's next slide was here. I think I mentioned this earlier, but we're definitely continuing this conversation inside of our organization. But I do want to give a shout, if I could get the right slide up here. There we go. If any of you on this Zoom, this was a very powerful film by who is now my good friend, Daniel Carslake. And I would recommend that if any of you have not had access to these resources, For the Bible Tells Me So, or For They Know Not What They Do, that you certainly dive into these two beautiful and painful, honestly, films, but they are ultimately about, reconciliation. So I'm pleased to say that we were one of the first organizations to be able to screen Daniel's film. I think after that, I think PFLAG was also one of those organizations that screened it nationally. So there was a good audience and access to it early on. It has since, obviously in the environment we live today, there's nobody going to movie theaters, so it's all been virtual for first run, and they've been putting it out there, but certainly it's available on iTunes, Amazon Prime, and even DVD. So I share that because I think that the content is so incredibly important. And so I would encourage everybody that has an opportunity to go out and check that out. And again, Daniel Carslake, a really powerful filmmaker who really knows how to affect change using film. So really great guy. I'd hope to have him here with us, and there's if we have an opportunity to come back to, in Southern states and have a continued conversation on this, I hope to have the opportunity to bring Daniel. I feel pretty lucky that we're even here today. Honestly, our firewall kind of at Walmart kicked us in the teeth this time, and we didn't have a lot of opportunity to prepare, and that was yay for our security IT people, but it didn't work out to our advantage necessarily. So we weren't able to pull together the full team that we wanted originally for this conversation today. But hopefully you'll get an opportunity to see that maybe in the future, and happy to have that conversation offline. There was one other question. Did we need to pay a fee for the film? Yes, we did. As an organization, we paid a fee. We negotiated that with First Run Films, and it was sponsored by, we actually went inside the organization. Janie Whiteside funded that for us out of the marketing domain at Walmart. And so our ARG didn't have to carry the burden of that expense. So that was a definite bonus. One thing I didn't mention in the context of this, and let me just check time real quickly. We had terrific support at Walmart this year from senior leaders. In addition to the good work that you saw that we did from an ARG perspective, our marketing team and senior leaders really rallied around Pride this year in a way that we had never had before. And I think Katie and Maritza might have shared that in that presentation earlier today, but there was a really powerful outreach to the LGBTQ community, and also celebrating the diversity of our community. And so there was some really powerful partnerships that we had that sort of evolved this year. So I have to say that this was probably, oddly enough, in the middle of COVID, and in the middle of the circumstances that we were living in, probably one of the most powerful moments for our associates at Walmart to really celebrate, elevate, and educate on LGBTQ issues. So any precedent, we didn't survey. Thank you, Chase, for that question. That was a learning. That was probably something we should have done, right? That was something that came up to us after the fact. We didn't survey. So the feedback that we got really was from the audience that participated in the panel, viewed the film, took advantage of that third event. Daniel came back on our third event for a director's cut, and we really got down into what were the experiences for the families in the film. And so if we had, that's a learning, and that's something that we, obviously as an ARG, we need to build that discipline. And it's weird because that's part of my domain, right? Ultimately. is that we should know from data. And so that's just a learning. So that's a great question. Any other questions, my friends? Post them in the chat. Did we catch it? Did we miss anything? Deborah, is there anything here that we need to address that we overlooked?
I don't think so. I'm just checking through the rest of the chat. I sent a couple of questions to you guys.
Okay. Okay. Well, like I said, feel free. This has been just, you know, a really amazing experience in this partnership and collaboration with Rock and his ARG. At Walmart was amazingly supportive, and I can't say enough about our leadership team and you know how they leaned in on this. Happy to talk to any of you. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll connect you to Rock. Rock, I didn't get your name on the slide. Sorry, my friend. But happy to connect you guys directly with Rock as well, who can talk to you about Favor and their experiences as an interfaith ARG. So yeah. I guess let me just check one more time if there are not any other questions. I don't want us to run over.
Yeah, Lisa, if I say one thing in closing, don't be afraid of it. Go for it, because I think you'll only find it a positive experience, and it will be beneficial to both sides. And so I would encourage you, go for it. Do not be afraid of it. I think you'll find it mutually beneficial.
Right. Okay, everyone. Listen, thank you for joining late on the afternoon. I know everybody's ready for cocktails or other sort of entertainment, so I'll set you free and just thank you so much for taking the time out to have this conversation. It was powerful, it was important to us, and I hope that we were able to share something with all of you. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Lisa. Bye.
You guys were great. Do you have anything else you need from me?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, it was wonderful. Thank you so much for a great experience, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Summit.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We genuinely appreciate it. Thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Deborah. Bye-bye.